Nico, what do you do and how much money do you make?
Yeah, so I do a few different things. I run a social media marketing agency, which does about $15,000 per month. And then I also run a startup, and the startup helps other companies leverage Upwork because my social media marketing agency gets all our deals from Upwork. And so those are the two businesses right now.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Can you tell me a little bit about how both businesses work?
Yeah. Yeah. So for the social media marketing agency, basically we have a pretty much fully automated outbound machine that, so we have virtual assistants, SOPs, some pretty good systems that we use to acquire deals. So like I said, everything is done through Upwork. We submit 50 to 100 proposals each week, typically. It's like a typical week. And then we do everything from social media management to video editing. We do some paid ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Google. And I would say those are really the main three services. So we have a graphic design team. So occasionally we'll do like catalog creation or brochure creation for some of our larger medical accessory clients. But mainly, like I said, it stays in paid ads and social media management with some video editing and then catalog creation. So that's kind of the social media management business. We have about 7 employees right now, so it's still fairly small, nothing too crazy. And then the startup is still a startup. So we'll launch in like the next 2 weeks to a month roughly. And basically that company helps other companies leverage the power of Upwork. And so we use all the SOPs, systems, processes that we've used to hire and train virtual assistants and submit, 50 to 100 proposals each week, and we plug them into other businesses so that they can utilize Upwork as well. So we serve a very wide range of companies, ranging from like accountants to architects to other marketing agencies, email marketing companies, pretty much the whole deal.
Well, I'm excited to see your journey through that one as well. But yeah, I think a lot of people sort of have this drive to start a business, but they don't know exactly where to start and what to actually do to get started. So can you run me through a little bit the process of how you actually got started with your first business, and how you actually what's the first thing you did when you decided this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so I'll give you just a little bit of background. So I dropped out of college, and I was playing soccer in college, and then got injured, had to have surgery on my shoulder. Basically, was told I wasn't going to be able to play anymore, and so I was kind of a little bit lost, like not really sure what I wanted to do. I kind of like soccer was my life up until that point. So I always knew I wanted to make a lot of money. Did some research, like I knew I didn't want to work for someone else. So business in general always really intrigued me, and it just felt like it made sense. So I was looking up like how to make money online, location freedom, all that stuff. Came across Iman Gaji. Did that kind of dive into the rabbit hole. It started with a bunch of research, like what is digital marketing, how to land clients. Ended up just investing in myself, buying Educate, the program. I think back then it was Grow Your Agency. He's rebranded since then, but bought his program, went through it in about a month, 3 weeks, and then just got started with outreach pretty much. I think that was really the main things. I always think speed is king, so I try and do things, obviously to a high degree, a high level, but if I can do them as fast as I can, then that's always best.
And we're not affiliated with Iman Gotzi, by the way, but just, got a little plug there. But I think it's interesting because what do you think for you was the moment where you decided this is going to be my full-time focus, and at what point, how much money were you making at that point where you thought this is what I'm going to go all in on, instead of just jumping around and having that sort of starting the new best thing or the next trend or whatever?
That's a really interesting question. I kind of I never really had a plan B really. So once I dropped out of school, I was like, I have to make this work. I don't really have another option, and so I just went all in on it. Pretty much immediately, I knew like this had to be the thing. It's not like me to jump around. I often just try and give things like the full swing because I have the belief that most people don't. Most people try something for 2 weeks and then they say, I sent 50 emails and I haven't closed a sales call, like I quit. And I really hate that kind of mentality. And so I went about 4 months before I signed my first client. I probably made like 5,000 to 7,000 cold calls. I sent thousands of emails. There was a lot of outreach done, a lot of bad outreach because at first you don't know any better, so you have to start somewhere. But yeah, I kind of knew from the start like this had to be the winner. This had to be the one, at least to make enough money where I could live on my own. I didn't have to rely on anybody. I could move out away from my hometown and ideally have complete location freedom. So yeah, I kind of always knew.
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, it's good. I think the thing right now is the shiny object syndrome, where everyone sort of starts something and then they see something else that looks easier or looks, a bit less demanding, and they just go for that. But it's good to hear you've stuck to that. And I want to go a little bit deeper into the business, in the sense that for someone just starting out, someone who's thinking about that sort of business, what is the typical starting cost for starting an agency, and what are the main expenses that someone who's thinking to get started can expect?
Yeah, so I love service-based businesses if you're just starting like your first business, because service-based businesses cost almost nothing to start. You don't need to have any inventory. It's like you can hire employees on kind of a contract basis, so like on a project-to-project basis where you're not paying them if they're not doing anything. And so I'm a huge fan of service-based businesses, because really, in my opinion, the biggest expense is going to be your education, like learning what you actually need to do. And so for me, that was buying courses, buying mentorships, buying programs, like anything I could do to just learn learn like what I needed to do. And so for me, like I said, really the biggest expense was buying the course in the beginning. Really, it's pretty slim business model. I mean, even now with $15,000 a month, we operate on like 75 to 80% margin. Almost all my employees, all except for one, are on a contract-to-contract basis. And so, that means each time I sign a client, they get a small percentage of it based on the work that they're doing for that client. So yeah, it's a super slim business model. I recommend anyone start service-based businesses if it is their first business, if they're just starting to get into the SMMA space, because really it's only education. I mean, you just need to know what to do, and then it depends on what kind of method of outreach you're going to use. If you're going to go through Upwork, it costs some money to submit proposals. If you're going to send cold emails, you'll need some like a tech stack, but really it's not much. Like even now when we send cold emails, I think our tech stack is $200 or $300 a month, and so it's still fairly slim, especially with the SMMA model where agency services range from like $500 to $3,000 per month typically. And so yeah, I love service-based businesses, and the startup cost is super small.
Yeah. And was it, when you first started, did you start by yourself or did you employ people straight away? And what do you think are some sort of actionable steps you can take to land that first client? Because I feel like the first is probably always the hardest, isn't it?
Yeah. The first one was definitely the hardest for me. I would say I wouldn't employ anyone until you have your first real client, because like for me it took 4 months, and so I actually made that mistake. I didn't employ anyone, but I kind of messaged this guy and I was like, hey, I want to hire you, I'm just not quite ready yet. And then he sat there for like 3.5 months without any work. And so I would just recommend, like, you got to learn a lot, and then actionable first steps is once you have learned a lot, like not everything there is to know, but once you have a solid base understanding of how to deliver the service that you're going to provide, and you're fairly confident in yourself to get decent results, I would reach out to people within your own network and just offer to do free work. So if you want to run Google ads, I would, if like your parents run a business, like my dad runs a small business, like I reached out to him and did some free work. But like reach out to anyone in your network and get that first client, even if they're not paying you. And then use that as social proof, and I would go directly to Upwork and start leveraging the social proof to get more and more clients on there. And so, yeah, that would kind of be if I had to do it over again, that's what I would do. In the beginning, I made a lot of cold calls, but I didn't really have any social proof. I also wasn't very good on the phones, and so that didn't help. But yeah, if I had to do it over again, I would reach out to people in your network. Chances are someone who runs a small business, and if they do run a small business, the chances are that if you do offer to do work for free for them, they're going to say yes. And so, I would just go do that, get some social proof, get a video testimonial, a case study, and then start leveraging that whether it's via Upwork or cold email or whatever other marketing channel you'd go with.
Yeah, yeah. And getting that first client, obviously, I guess that's your sort of big win to start with. But what would you say are some of the most important skills to actually run a successful social media marketing agency?
Yeah, I would say, it is different at all levels. Going from 0 to 5K is really just knowledge. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so 0 to 5K is just, you got to sell a few deals, right? It's nothing crazy, but if you're selling 2 to 3 deals a month, like that's probably 5K or pretty close to it. And so learning how to communicate, I think in all aspects of your business is the big skill. It's kind of a lot of skills, but I think communication leads to sales. It leads to writing better copy. If you're doing proposals or emails or whatever, you're going to be able to do cold calls better. So you're going to be able to sell better, market better, and you're going to be able to manage your employees more effectively because you know how to communicate with them. So in the beginning, I was terrible with communicating. I was so bad. And so I must have made 6,000 cold calls before we actually signed a client. And it's like, I got a lot better every time I was making cold calls, but if you get good at communication, I think it's super applicable in multiple spots of your business. And I think that's definitely the number one skill I would recommend people get good at.
No, yeah, that's interesting. Because I assume while you're on that journey to get your first client, and you don't know, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know if you're doing the right thing, you don't know and there's no proof of it actually working. So what would you say was your biggest failure? And what's something you learned from that? And how'd you overcome that?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So biggest failure. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd really consider this a failure, but kind of the biggest bump, I would say, in my journey. I dropped out of college in January. And then I believe it was late April, early May, I kind of had a falling out with my parents. And so it ended up, they kicked me out of my house, or their house. And then I ended up sleeping in my car for 3-ish months, roughly 3-4 months. And so, I slept in my car. I rented a tiny office for $150 a month. And so I was either sleeping in my car or my office and then just putting in 15-hour days, 7 days a week, without ever taking, days off. And so not really a failure, but maybe a failure to communicate on my part because, I won't go into too many details, but I think when most people get kicked out of their house, it's not only one side's fault. It's not either the parents or the kids. It's usually both play a part, and so I definitely played a part in that. And so kind of like I said, not knowing how to communicate my thoughts to other people in a way that they can understand and that's usable for them would have been probably the biggest failure. And then that was shown in all parts of the business, from managing employees to making sales calls, and I blew dozens and dozens of sales calls. I've blown and bombed so many that it's just not even funny. So yeah, the biggest failure would just be learning how to properly communicate with people so that they can really understand the ideas in your head.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because you actually scaled up quite quickly, and you managed to get the business to where it is quite quickly. And I think some would argue that the social media marketing sort of space is quite saturated, or quite competitive. So what are some strategies that you use that you would recommend to get more clients, either at the start or what you use now, but some strategies that aren't really spoken about but you found that work for you?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely saturated, oversaturated with the amount of companies that there are, but I would say it's undersaturated with the amount of people that really know what they're truly doing and can get really good results. I think especially now, finding companies that can get really good results is tough. It's definitely tough. And so, if you get good at your service, your retention rates are going to be amazing, and that's going to be the primary thing that's going to lead to you seeing a lot of success and generating a lot of revenue. Because if you can sign a client for $2,000 a month and they stay with you for 6 months versus 1 month, that's $2,000 versus $12,000. And so, just getting good at your service. But in terms of marketing channels, if I had to do it over again, I would get on Upwork right away. I mean, if you are in the SMMA space and you can sell something on Upwork, like cold email, social media management, video editing, graphic design, whatever it is, I would get on Upwork. And the primary reason being, you don't have to convince them that they need your service. They already know they need your service because they posted a job asking for it. And so if you can just get on the sales call, it can be incredibly easy. Like sometimes the sales calls will last 10 minutes with people, that I met on Upwork because I don't have to convince them that this is the service. I don't need to educate them on the service. Like they already know everything and they're in so much pain that they posted a job looking for someone to do this for them. And so like sometimes the sales calls are just kind of a meet and greet and then they just say, well, can you do this? And I say yes. And then we sign a contract and it's done. And so I would get on Upwork because even if you don't have much social proof, maybe you only have a few examples of your work, you don't have very many case studies, even if you do all that, you still can do pretty well on Upwork. And so I would say, get your first case study or piece of social proof by reaching out to people in your network, family members, whatever, and then get on Upwork.
Yeah. Well, actually, that makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. But when you're trying to learn about this whole agency stuff or any sort of business model, it's not very clear, that kind of thing. But what you said just makes perfect sense, to be fair. And I'm wondering, how did you scale your business and take on more clients? Because I assume at some point you reach a bottleneck where you have a lot of clients, but then you need to start employing people, and how do you actually go about finding employing people? You did mention that people are on a contract basis usually, but what things do you look out for when thinking of people to hire?
Yeah, so I pretty much hired as I went, and so first I hired a media buyer who did Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads, and so he ran my first two or three clients were all advertising clients. And so that probably put me to like 2 to 3K a month, somewhere in that range. And then, at that point it was just me and him, and that was the whole business. And so, that's super profitable and it's super slim, and he's, the only person I needed to kind of manage. We'd set up a weekly call. And so it's pretty easy at that point. Then the fourth client, I think, was a social media management client. So at that point, I actually started leveraging AI so I could create graphics with AI. And then I didn't need to hire a graphic design team yet. So I did that and then hired a video editor on Upwork. Really the main thing I look for it depends. Like if I'm hiring someone who will do something that I already know how to do, then all I'm looking for is competency and the ability to follow directions. Because I know if they have those two things, I'll be able to train them to a good enough spot where they can, take over what I'm doing. But if it's someone that's going to do something that I don't know how to do, like video editing, for example, I have no idea how to edit videos, but I know what a good video edit looks like. So really, I'm just looking for quality of work. I already know I'm going to pay them a little bit more than I would someone that I'm just going to, hire and then train. So yeah, really all I'm looking for is quality of work, and then the best predictor of how someone's going to do in your role is how they've done in roles in the past that were very similar. And so if I want to edit videos for realtors and I'm going to hire a video editor, I'm going to look at how many of them have done the style that I want to use for realtors, stuff like that. And so those are the two main things that I look for. But yeah, really I hired as I went. I didn't hire prematurely too much other than the first guy. And everyone besides my virtual assistant is on a project-to-project basis. So I'm really glad I did those things. And those are the things I learned in the courses, the mentorships that I bought. So I think there's a lot of value in investing in yourself, learning, just getting the education piece down. And then, just kind of learning how you go. Because I had no idea. I'd never managed people before. You just kind of to a certain degree, you can plan all you want, but you have to just learn as you go.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. And when you sort of price the works, can you get into a little bit about what are some profit margins to expect usually? And when you price your work, how do you know how do you go about pricing? Is it a set sort of fee, or is it how do you know that you've reached a good point where you've given the client a good price and you can agree on it?
Yeah, good question. So Pricing is something we test all the time. And so we're pretty consistently testing different prices and just seeing what the conversion rates look like. For context, I would always rather sell something for $10,000 and close 10% of my sales than sell something for $1,000 and close 100% of my sales. Like, I would just way rather sell a high ticket item and then do less work. Obviously that's not always applicable because social media marketing services usually don't go for 10K. And so for pricing wise, I started pretty low. I started selling paid ads with a $500 startup fee and $1,000 per month. And the $1,000 per month that they paid me, half of that was the ad spend. And so really, after the first month, it was $500 ad spend and then $500 to me to generate. And that was for Facebook ads. So we did that for the first 2 clients. And then the third client on Facebook ads, I tried something different. I regretted it, but I tried a different pricing model where they paid me a $2,000 startup fee. And then they paid for the Facebook ad spend, and then they wouldn't pay me anything until I brought them leads, leads that turned into deals. And so I think it's an okay model, but the mistake that I made was my client was in the home remodeling and interior design industry, and so their clients are worth like $200K or more sometimes, depending on who you go with. And so that means that they're not going to close that many of their leads. It means that they don't get as many jobs as someone who charges 5K, right? And so I think the mistake that I made was that there was a very limited amount of clients closed, which was fine for him, but not fine for me because obviously every month I need to pay my employee who's running those ads, and so it ended up being not very profitable, a small margin. I don't remember exactly how much, but I think we kept him for 3 months. And I paid my ads guy $300 a month. And so so it was like $1,000 profit roughly. So like roughly 50% margin. Somewhere in there. And so normally I charge $1,500 for Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever else. That's kind of where we're at now. And then they pay for the ad spend. And it's just a $1,500 retainer. There's no startup fee or anything like that. Just nice and simple. And that's per month. So $1,500 per month. And like I said, really my only expense is paying my advertising guy, who's $300 a month. And then it changes if they want to spend more money. Like we had a Google Ads client recently who wanted to spend like $6K a month, I think, on each account. We're managing 2 accounts. So we'll do custom pricing for them. And then our margins usually go up when that happens.
Great. And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are just getting started? What's sort of the big thing that you wish you heard back when you started?
Yeah, everyone said this, but I wish I would have actually done it. Would be like find someone who's ahead of you and learn from them. So find someone who does exactly what you want to do, and then go learn from them. If you could get a job for them, working for not much money, but they're going to let you learn from them, like that's worth so much more than they could ever pay you. Like what you're going to learn in knowledge will allow you to start your own business and get through a lot of the hurdles that you would hit otherwise. And so that's something I wish I would have done earlier. I did that really once I was at like $15,000 a month, which has been awesome. Like I have a mentor who I pay for business advice, and he's saved me thousands of dollars in mistakes that I would have made if I hadn't paid him for consulting. And so that would be the big one, is just find someone who does exactly what you want to do, and then either pay them for knowledge or work for them so you can gain the knowledge that they have. And then that's going to save you thousands and thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of time that you would have wasted, going down rabbit holes that you shouldn't even be going down.
Yeah, and just leading on to that, I think a lot of people would wonder, how can they reach out to people who have done, like you said, what they've done but a bit better? And how did you reach out to anyone a specific way, or how would anyone go about doing that?
Yeah, so good question. So I like I said, I did mine too late when I was at 15,000 per month, and then I paid him for consulting, and so I just bought a few consulting sessions through his website. But if you want to get in, either work for someone or work for free, like I get a decent amount of DMs every day on X, on Twitter, and most of them are terrible. And so like if you, the few people that I have hired off of Twitter, which has been just one to this point, he's done work for free at first. And so he was at like 1,500 followers and I was at maybe 300 or 400 on Twitter. And he reached out and he said, hey man, like I don't want to sell you anything, but I just want to help you out for free so I can use you as my case study. Like for me, there's zero risk. There's absolutely no risk in that. And so I was like, sure, man, you know, it's a goal of mine to build a social media presence on Twitter. It's completely risk-free. He's going to do consulting work for free. He's going to help me improve my writing. He's going to, you know, help me like write better posts and all that stuff, help me engage with people. And so, you know, it's completely risk-free for me. And then he proved himself. After the first month, we grew from 3-ish hundred to like, I don't know, 4-ish hundred, somewhere around there. Grew like 100 followers, which was great for me. So I hired him. I brought him on. I pay him $500 or $600 a month. And basically, he just reviews my posts before they go out. He does consulting sessions with me each month. And yeah, that's pretty much what he does. And so like proving yourself first for free is by far the easiest way to gain someone's trust. And even, you know, it works in the D2C world. It works in the B2B world. You know, if you're a virtual assistant and you want to be hired by an agency, you know, you can reach out and ask them to do free work, or you could also find out what they want and then just do it for free and send it to them. Like if you're a video editor and you see me post a terrible YouTube video, like download it, edit it, and then send it to me. And if it's awesome, chances are I would hire you. Like that's just kind of the natural thought process. And especially with small business owners who don't have, you know, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to just shell out for like employees. Like if you prove yourself first, the chances are that you're going to get hired are very high.
Yeah, no, that all of that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and so as someone who's making $15,000 a month, what does a typical day look like for you? So what's your typical sort of routine?
Yeah, so I'm up at 3:30 in the morning. That's when my alarm goes. So I like getting up early, and then usually I'm at my desk at about 4 a.m. with the computer going. I try and not take meetings until like 11:30, but usually that doesn't happen. Usually I have one meeting at, you know, between 9 and 10. But ideally, you know, I'll have meetings till like 11. So it's just deep work from like 4 till 11. Somewhere in there, I have a few coffees, some breakfast. And then afternoon is usually meetings and then projects. Like right now, I'm at the point where the agency is pretty much fully automated. It takes not much work for me each day, which is great. And so a lot of work is going into the startup, drafting the emails, the email sequences, just getting all our pricing set up. So today I worked on the pricing structure for each service that we're going to be offering. And then the website is in construction. So there's a lot of just little projects that are happening kind of while we're in the startup phase. And yeah, right now it's like almost 4 p.m. for me. And so I have another meeting after this, and then I'll grab dinner and then probably do a little bit of work from like 5 to 7 and then go to bed. That's pretty much my day.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. The username is just Nico_Hessel. So it's first name _ last name. Yeah, that's pretty much where I post a lot of content. I'm starting on YouTube, so you can find my link in the description, but hoping to put out like one video a week on just Upwork client acquisition and mainly just how I used Upwork to scale my marketing agency to $15,000 a month. And yeah.
Well, Nico, it was great to speak to you. We'll definitely keep in touch, but I really appreciate taking the time to actually come here and have a chat. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.